I'm Daniel Levine, and this is the Bio Report. One of the key obstacles to developing new drugs and diagnostics is the lack of access to longitudinal biological and clinical patient data. Culmination Bio, a spinout of Intermountain Health, is developing the largest patient data platform with more than 40 years of de-identified patient electronic health records and biospecimen data. We spoke to Lincoln Nadauld, President and CEO of Culmination Bio, about the data driving the company's platform, how partners are using it today, and how it has the potential to accelerate the development of new diagnostics and therapies. Lincoln, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Danny.
We're going to talk about real-world data, Culmination Bio, and how companies are able to leverage its data to advance the development of diagnostics and therapeutics. Let's start with the origins of Culmination Bio, which the giant nonprofit healthcare provider Intermountain Health spun out in 2023. How did the decision to spin this out come about?
You know, I'm a medical oncologist and have been working at Intermountain Health for many years. Intermountain, for those who may not be aware, is an integrated delivery network headquartered in Salt Lake City, and it consists of 33 hospitals, 400 physician clinics, and cares for millions of lives across 7 primary states. And I have been leading a precision medicine program at Intermountain Health for many years, and that initially began in oncology, where I work. I'm an oncologist and take care of cancer patients. And in the effort of implementing a precision oncology program, we saw success and published that and extended into other areas like mental health and neonatal care and ultimately into population precision health. And eventually I became aware of the enormous data assets that the health system had been accumulating and had learned about how powerful it is to have these big integrated data assets. And so I spent considerable time working with the executive leadership team of Intermountain Health to take these data assets and put them into a vehicle that we could use to accelerate the discovery of new, better tests for patients and new and better medicines for patients. And that vehicle became Culmination Bio.
What was the vision for Culmination Bio? What problem did you see it addressing?
Well, we knew, and I think many across the country and throughout the world recognize that the kind of data that pharma and biotech and diagnostic labs need for their efforts is held by health systems. And the big challenge is making that data available in a compliant way. And so the need that I could see was to accelerate this very lengthy timeline that pharma R&D groups face in acquiring data sets. And I thought, you know, part of Intermountain Health's mission is to help people live the healthiest lives possible. And one way to do that is to partner with other experts in the industry to accelerate their R&D efforts, because really, you know, at pharma and biotech, their efforts are to discover better tests, better medicines, et cetera, and those can then go back and help patients. So, you know, I thought, well, we need to take some of this data that can be so informative and in a private and compliant way, use it to discover those better tests and better medicines. And I'll partner with experts in those areas. And so that's really what we're doing. We're taking this data that's so valuable and leveraging it to generate the kinds of insights that turn around and benefit patients.
You touched on your work at Intermountain Precision Genomics Program, and there you had led its implementation across the company's hospitals and clinics. This included sequencing 500,000 whole genomes. Has this changed care at Intermountain Health, and did it speak to what might be possible with regards to what you're doing at Culmination Bio?
It definitely has changed care, and it absolutely informed what we're doing at Culmination Bio. That project was a collaboration with Decode Genetics in Iceland, as well as Amgen. And the thought was that if we can better understand which diseases are basically caused by certain underlying genetic events, then maybe we can identify better tests and better medicines to help patients with those conditions. So we undertook this large population effort where we identified patients, we approached them, we offered them to participate, we de-identified and anonymized their data, and we generated whole genome sequencing data linked to diagnosis codes. And then we've been working with Decode to make discoveries. And in fact, we ought to talk about it, but Decode Genetics, and we've been alongside them, has made enormous and many momentous discoveries that are being published in the major scientific journals out of this data. So the result is that Intermountain Health has become very sophisticated in the use of genomic and genetic data to help patients. The doctors have become very familiar. And frankly, the whole population in the Intermountain West is much more conversational and fluent in the language of genetic and genomics. So it has, I think, elevated the entire awareness throughout this region.
Culmination Bio is not alone in seeking to make available large real-world data sets, though I suspect the amount of data and biospecimens it has gives it some competitive advantage. Can you provide a sense of the range and volume of what it has and how it compares to others in terms of the data and biospecimens it has?
Yeah, you're right. There are other entities in this space who have significant data sets. I think where Culmination Bio has really found uniqueness, at least that's what we're hearing from our partners, is in the breadth of diagnoses. There are traditional companies in this space who have access to data sets in a single diagnostic state like oncology, and Culmination, happily has data sets that span the whole spectrum of human disease: neurodegenerative disorders, cardiovascular disease, oncology, autoimmunity, etc. Then there's also uniqueness in depth of the data. It's very multimodal. It's structured data from the EMR, it's unstructured data from notes, it's claims data, it's imaging, it's pathology reports, it's everything. It's very comprehensive and it's totally unfragmented. And that leads to the third area where we find uniqueness, which is this longitudinal nature of the data. So, it enables us to really accelerate the efforts of our partners because the data are deep, broad, and longitudinal.
And is the data dynamic? Is it continuously updated?
It is. In fact, that's something we felt very strongly about. Understanding a patient's journey, when they're initially diagnosed with a lung cancer, for example, and then understanding what happens throughout that care. And then when they're done with care, what are the events that can happen afterwards? For example, are they diagnosed with high blood pressure afterwards, or do they have a stroke afterwards? So our data set receives continuous updates from the Intermountain Health system in a de-identified way. And it's very dynamic. And so it's constantly being added to. In fact, we get about 450,000 new cases every year. And that's on top of the 9 million biospecimens that we already have available. And all of them have this linked multimodal data, which makes it very powerful.
What's the business model? How do you work with your customers, and do they pay on a subscription basis, a project basis, or in some other way?
Well, initially, we've been working with our partners and customers to identify the patient cohorts that they're looking for. For example, they might need data from patients with lung cancer, or maybe they need data from patients with inflammatory bowel disease. And we can go to the shelves and pull those samples out of our 9 million deep biorepository, or we can go and collect it prospectively using a team of experts and coordinators who can prospectively identify and contact patients and recruit and enroll them. And so that's been our initial approach is kind of project-based cohort generation. But we're just launching later this year a data platform where our partners will be able to access our data in a more seamless way using a web-based portal system where all of our data is contained in a cloud-based data lake with technology built on it for querying and analyzing. And that is something that our customers and partners will access through more of a membership or subscription-based model.
I suspect you have both structured and unstructured data. What have you had to do to put this in a form that makes it accessible and usable by life science companies? Have you had to do things to harmonize the data, clean it, or structure it?
Yeah, it's a big challenge, as you are aware, and so many in this space understand. Fortunately, Intermountain Health does a terrific job of getting it all linked and harmonized. So it comes out of the health system in a way that all of the different data elements are linked to individual patient journeys. And so that's very helpful. Now, once we get it into our data lake, we have to put in a fair amount of effort to structure it, organize it, and really to curate it. And so we go about curating it according to disease states that make sense for our partners. And that's a big effort. And that's part of what this data platform does for us. It presents the data in a structured, organized, and curated way that our partners can understand.
One of the things that's become apparent is that electronic health records were designed for insurance needs and not necessarily to inform research. Is there any effort to alter the electronic health records to make them more beneficial to informing healthcare?
That is such a common refrain. I haven't ever met a physician who really loves an electronic medical record. And, people sometimes feel like it's a mechanism for billing primarily. But I really think the electronic medical record system is critical. It enables so much of the discovery and research that is now happening in healthcare. And that data was locked away in handwritten physician notes for so long and could be used in a way that we improve outcomes like we're doing now. So we have not gone to the point of going backwards to the health system and modifying an EMR or adding data to it. Currently, it's mostly a unidirectional approach, but I think there will be a scenario where that becomes possible. In the meantime, I'm glad that EMRs are around because we can now see healthcare data in a more structured way.
It's a remarkable time for data, just that we're able to capitalize on these large data sets with advances in information technology. Is Culmination Bio at all leveraging AI, and has it been able to take advantage of these rapidly evolving ways to leverage large data sets?
Well, AI is so exciting. Being able to analyze data sets of billions or trillions of individual data points, of course, is not feasible for humans. But training these large models to analyze that and find similarities and novel insights is the best of what technology has to offer. Clearly, we really feel like the AI space is best utilized when you apply unique data sets to it, and so we have begun doing some of that because we feel like we have a very unique data set, and so we've begun applying both ML and AI. And it works is the short answer. There is, we have evidence that there are pretty unique insights that can come out when you apply a very unique, highly, deep and specialized data set to an AI or ML model.
And what does it take for an end user to make use of the system? Can anyone sit down at a terminal and query it? Do you need a level of programming knowledge to use it?
Currently, it's not available for just any regular person to log in and utilize the data, but we are working closely with our partners to enable them. We also have experts inside of Culmination that can work with our customers, and our own analysts understand how to access the data and use it. But the launch of this data platform will really help the end user use it directly. And so we anticipate our partners and customers just being able to log in and analyze, interrogate, and query the data on their own. And if there are very deep or special kind of queries or analyses that need to happen, of course, we can assist with that.
Well, I want to talk about two use cases because I think they give a sense of some of the ways that this data can be used. The first is a partnership you have with Merck that seeks to accelerate research and drug development. How does that partnership work, and how is it expected to benefit Merck?
Merck's been a terrific partner. They are interested in various disease states, oncology, autoimmunity, neurosciences. This is all publicly stated by them, and they have what others have as a need as well, which is access to deep multimodal, I will call it, data in various disease states. And, that's what we're good at. It's such an interesting time in healthcare. It historically has not been possible to go collect these deep data sets that have various multimodal elements to it, including genomic data out of a biospecimen and linked EMR data or imaging data. So we've built that capability knowing that that's what industry needs. And so that's how we've been partnering with Merck, is to identify specific cohorts according to their design. And then we collect, generate, and deliver those data sets. In some cases, we help analyze, and in other cases, they just do the analysis themselves.
You have a separate partnership with Billion to One around cancer diagnostics. What is that, and what are they doing there?
They've stated, and we've stated with them, that they're interested in generating and developing novel diagnostic tests to diagnose cancer earlier and faster and with less invasiveness through blood-based diagnostic tests. And, we have access to patients who want to accelerate these kinds of efforts and are willing to contribute blood or other biospecimens. And so, and we know what the diagnoses are and all of the accompanying data. So, we're partnering with them to provide the kind of data sets that they need to accelerate the development of these tests, which will then turn around and help patients get diagnosed earlier, faster, and better.
How do you see this ultimately changing the development of diagnostics, therapeutics, or changing patient care and outcomes? What are some of the benefits you expect it to provide?
Well, I think we're entering an era pretty quickly where a couple of things will happen. Number one, I think we're going to have cancer screening tests for patients that are all blood-based. We just saw an FDA approval for a blood-based colon cancer screening test, for example. I think we'll see that in other kinds of cancers. And we're quickly entering an era where patients going to their primary care provider to have, typical well patient checks. And in the past, they've been offered, lipid testing and blood pressure testing. Well, I think they're now going to be offered screening for things like cancer. And beyond that, I could see other diseases being screened for using blood-based tests. So your doctor will say, go get your cholesterol checked. And while you're at it, we'll draw blood and see if you have one of any number of cancers. Then what that will lead to is the diagnosis of cancer at earlier stages, we believe, which will then yield higher cure rates. If you can diagnose it at earlier stages, you can cure it with better effectiveness. So that's just one example of where we're headed. And it's this kind of data that we and others are generating that will accelerate those efforts, inform those efforts, and make all of that feasible for patients. It is really exciting. And then, of course, the conclusion to that will be that patients will increasingly have their genomes mapped and their treatments will be tailored to their specific DNA makeup. And so we'll get better outcomes with fewer side effects. That's an exciting world.
And as you think about the potential to make use of all this real world data, where do you think it will ultimately have the biggest impact in healthcare?
I think it's going to be driving down the costs of healthcare. I think we're going to drive down the cost because we'll get better at prescribing the right medicine to the right patient at the right time. So much of our costs are associated with side effects that were unknown. And so a patient takes a drug for, an ordinary condition, and then they have these terrible side effects, and that generates a lot of healthcare utilization. So if we can be better at predicting that up front and avoiding those complications, we can save a lot of money for patients. I also think we'll get better at using diagnostics in a more targeted way. If we can understand who's at the highest risk and then point our diagnostics at those patients, we can decrease utilization in the low risk populations. So I really think we have to drive down costs in healthcare, and it's this kind of data and accompanying tests and medicines that are going to contribute to that.
Lincoln Nadauld, President and CEO of Culmination Bio. Lincoln, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Danny.
Thanks for listening. The Bio Report is a production of the Levine Media Group. To automatically download this podcast each week, subscribe to our RSS feed or through iTunes or other podcast manager. To join our mailing list, go to levinemediagroup.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop us a line or are interested in sponsoring this podcast, send an email to danny@levinemediagroup.com. Special thanks to Jonah Levine, who composed our theme music, and the Jonah Levine Collective, which performs it.